administered. The sooner, the better. Step 2. 24 to 48 hours after taking RU46, the woman takes misoprostol, also called Cytotec, that is administered either orally or vaginally. RU46 and misoprostol together cause severe cramping, contractions, and often heavy bleeding to force the dead baby out of the woman's uterus. The process can be very intense and painful, and the bleeding and contractions can last from a few hours to several days. While she could lose her baby any time and anywhere during this process, the woman will often sit on a toilet as she prepares to expel the child, which she will then flush. She may even see her dead baby within the pregnancy sac. At 9 weeks, for example, the baby will be almost an inch long, and if she looks carefully, she might be able to count the fingers and toes. After she has disposed of her baby, the woman may have bleeding and spotting for several weeks. Bleeding lasts, on average, 9 to 16 days. 8% of women bleed more than 30 days, and 1% require hospitalization because of heavy bleeding. RU46 is only FDA approved for the first 7 weeks of pregnancy. While RU46 can be used off-label up to 9 weeks, the failure rate increases as the pregnancy progresses. At 7 weeks, it has a 5% failure rate. At 8 weeks, an 8% failure rate, and at 9 weeks, a 10% failure rate. If failure occurs, she will usually be offered a surgical abortion. For the mother, medical abortion often causes abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, headache, and heavy bleeding. Maternal deaths have occurred, most frequently due to infection and undiagnosed ectopic pregnancy. First trimester surgical abortion called suction D&C, dilatation and curettage. This is the most frequently performed abortion and is used typically from 5 to 13 weeks of pregnancy. After administering anesthesia, the abortionist uses a speculum like this. This is placed inside the vagina and opened using this screw on the side, allowing the abortionist to see the cervix, the entrance to the uterus. The cervix acts as a gate that stays closed for the duration of pregnancy, protecting the baby until it is ready for birth. The abortionist uses a series of metal rods called dilators, like these, which increase in thickness, and inserts them into the cervix to dilate it, gaining access to the inside of the uterus where the baby resides. The baby has a heartbeat, fingers, toes, arms, and legs, but its bones are still weak and fragile. The abortionist takes a suction catheter like this one. This is a 14 French suction catheter. It's clear plastic, about 9 inches long, and it has a hole through the center. It is inserted through the cervix into the uterus. The suction machine is then turned on with a force 10 to 20 times more powerful than your household vacuum cleaner. The baby is rapidly torn apart by the force of the suction and squeezed through this tubing down into the suction machine, followed by the placenta. Though the uterus is mostly emptied at this point, one of the risks of a suction D&C is incomplete abortion, essentially pieces of the baby or placenta left behind. This can lead to infection or bleeding. In an attempt to prevent this, the abortionist uses a curette to scrape the lining of the uterus. A curette is basically a long-handled curved blade. Once the uterus is empty, the speculum is removed and the abortion is complete. The risks of suction D&C include perforation or laceration of the uterus or cervix, potentially damaging intestine, bladder, and nearby blood vessels, hemorrhage, infection, and in rare instances, even death. Future pregnancies are also at a greater risk for loss or premature delivery due to abortion-related trauma and injury to the cervix. Second trimester surgical abortion called dilatation and evacuation, or D&E. A D&E is performed between 13 and 24 weeks of pregnancy. After administering anesthesia, the abortionist uses a weighted speculum, like this one, that opens the vagina widely. Because second trimester babies are so large, this greater access facilitates a late-term abortion. Late-term abortion requires that the cervix be prepared 24 to 48 hours in advance with laminaria. Laminaria is a type of sterilized seaweed that absorbs water over 8 to 12 hours and swells to several times its original diameter. Once removed, metal dilators can be used to further open the cervix as needed. Once the cervix has been stretched open, the suction tube is placed inside. A baby at 20 weeks gestation is as big as the length of my hand, from head to rump, not counting the legs. The suction machine is turned on, and pale yellow amniotic fluid surrounding the baby is suctioned out through the catheters. With babies this big, they don't fit through catheters this size. The baby's bones and skull are too strong to be torn apart by suction alone. This is a Sofer clamp. A Sofer clamp is made of stainless steel. It's about 13 inches long. The business end is about 2.5 inches long and a 1/2 inch wide, and there are rows of sharp teeth. This is a grasping instrument. When it gets a hold of something, it does not let go. The abortionist uses this clamp to grasp an arm or leg. Once he has a firm grip, the abortionist pulls hard in order to tear the limb from the baby's body. One by one, the rest of the limbs are removed, along with the intestines, the spine, and the heart and lungs. Usually the most difficult part of the procedure is extracting the baby's head, which is about the size of a large plum at 20 weeks. The head is grasped and crushed. The abortionist knows he has crushed the skull when a white substance comes out of the cervix. This was the baby's brains. The abortionist then removes skull pieces. He removes the placenta and any leftover parts of the baby with a curette, scraping the lining of the uterus for any remaining tissue. The abortionist then collects the baby parts and reassembles them to make sure that there are 2 arms, 2 legs, and all the pieces. Once all the parts have been accounted for, the abortion is complete. For the woman, this procedure carries a significant risk of major complications, including perforation or laceration of the uterus or cervix, with possible damage to the bowel, bladder, and other maternal organs. Infection and hemorrhage can also occur, which can even lead to death. Future pregnancies are also at greater risk for loss or premature delivery due to abortion-related trauma and injury to the cervix. Finally, I'm going to describe a 3rd trimester induced abortion, which is performed at 25 weeks to term. At this point, the baby is almost fully developed and viable, meaning he or she could survive outside the womb if the mother were to go into labor prematurely. Because the baby is so large and developed, this procedure takes 3 or 4 days to complete. On day 1, the abortionist uses a large needle to inject a drug called digoxin. Digoxin is generally used to treat heart problems, but a high enough dosage of digoxin will cause fatal cardiac arrest. The abortionist inserts the needle with the digoxin through the woman's abdomen or through her vagina and into the baby, targeting either the head, torso, or heart. The baby will feel it. Babies at this stage feel pain. When the needle pierces the baby's body and the digoxin takes effect, the life of the baby will end. The abortionist then inserts multiple sticks of seaweed called laminaria into the woman's cervix. They will slowly open up the cervix for delivery of a stillborn baby. While the woman waits for the laminaria to dilate her cervix, she carries her dead baby inside of her for 2 to 3 days. On day 2, the abortionist replaces the laminaria and may perform a second ultrasound to ensure the baby is dead. If the child is still alive, he administers another lethal dose of digoxin. The woman then goes back to where she is staying while her cervix continues to dilate. If she goes into labor and is unable to make it to the clinic in time, she will give birth at home or in a hotel. In this case, she may be advised to deliver her baby into a bathroom toilet. The abortionist then comes to remove the baby and clean up. If she can make it to the clinic, she will do so during her severest contractions and deliver her dead son or daughter. If the baby does not come out whole, then the procedure becomes a D&E, a dilation and evacuation, and the abortionist uses clamps and forceps to dismember the baby, piece by piece. Once the placenta and all the body parts have been removed, the abortion is complete. Late-term abortions have a high risk of hemorrhage, lacerations, and uterine perforations, as well as a risk of maternal death. Future pregnancies are also at a greater risk for loss or premature delivery due to abortion-related trauma and injury to the cervix. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm Dr. Anthony Levatino, and in the early part of my career as an OBGYN, I performed over 1,200 abortions. One day, after completing one of those abortions, I looked at the remains of a preborn child whose life I had ended, and all I could see was someone's son or daughter. I came to realize that killing a baby at any stage of pregnancy for any reason is wrong. I want you to know today, no matter where you're at or what you've done, you can change. Make a decision today to protect the preborn. Thank you for your time.
Well, welcome, and thank you for joining this emergency pro-life briefing for the state of New Mexico. Today regretfully marks the 48th anniversary of the tragic court cases of Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton, which have imposed the violence of abortion on millions of women and children. On top of that, we are now facing at least 4 years of the most extreme pro-abortion administration in our nation's history, and right here in New Mexico, over the coming days, we are facing two of the most extreme anti-life bills in all 50 states. SB 10, which even if Roe is overturned, will continue to allow unrestricted abortion for any reason up to the day of birth, even for minors without parental consent. And HB 47, which is an extreme assisted suicide bill, which could very well mark New Mexico not only as the late-term abortion capital of the nation, but now the capital of assisted suicide as well. And on this anniversary, when normally we come together at our capital in the state for our annual March for Life in Santa Fe, this year, right as these critical bills are going to committee, our peaceful free speech demonstration was conveniently blocked. However, in spite of all these obstacles, the pro-life movement is joining together to fight back, unlike ever before, to be a voice for the least of those among us. Tonight, we have an amazing lineup of state, national, and even international experts who have united together for the sole purpose of empowering you to take action to be a part of the solution here in our land of enchantment. My name is Mark Cavalier, and for those of you joining from the southern part of the state, you might recognize me as the founder and the executive director of the Southwest Coalition for Life, which started 5 years ago in Las Cruces, where it's been my privilege to see the Holy Spirit call so many to take peaceful and prayerful action, through which we have witnessed God close 3 local abortion facilities in just over 3 years. It was my honor to be invited to host this event for you and to introduce you to so many of these amazing guests, the first of whom is here to start us off, our time together, off with a word of prayer and to explain the significance of today as the Sanctity of Human Life Day. I actually met him 1 year ago, actually to the very hour, in front of the prayer vigil at the United States Supreme Court before the National March for Life. He's a great leader in our movement, a great friend of New Mexico, and you know him as the Director of Priests for Life. I want to thank you for joining us. It's Father Frank Pavone. How are you doing, Father?
Mark, how are you? Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you and all the great lineup of speakers that we have tonight. So thank you, and what a joy it's been for me to be in so many parts of New Mexico over the years. So God bless all of you. Let's pray. Father of life, we praise you, we thank you. We know that we are not just working for victory, we are working from victory because Jesus Christ has abolished death. We start with victory, O Lord, and we commit ourselves to proclaim, to celebrate, and to serve the gospel of life. Lord, you told us to read the signs of the times. We know the moment that we are in. We know the challenges, and yet we know that the extremism that we are faced with from this pro-abortion Democrat Party gives us an opening like never before, gives us the opportunity to speak to the minds and hearts, the consciences of America, because, Lord, this extremism does not represent where our fellow citizens are. So bless us tonight with insight, bless us with renewed fervor, and bless us, Lord, above all, with the confidence that we already have a victory placed in our hands, and that we will indeed see it unfold in these coming months and years. We pray all of this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Friends, today is Sanctity of Life Sunday, not Sunday, but the National Sanctity of Life Day, proclaimed by President Donald J. Trump. And I have his proclamation here. I want to read a few sentences particularly pertinent to what we're going to talk about tonight. He says, the United States is a shining example of human rights for the world. However, some in Washington are fighting to keep the United States among a small handful of nations, including North Korea and China, that allow elective abortions after 20 weeks. I join with countless others who believe that this is morally and fundamentally wrong, and today I renew my call on Congress to pass legislation prohibiting late-term abortion. Since the beginning, my administration has been dedicated to lifting up every American, and that starts with protecting the rights of the most vulnerable in our society, the unborn. This is a day, and please do read the president's whole statement and spread it around. It's out there on many websites, including our own, endabortion.us. But friends, the point is this, that he praises and thanks the entire pro-life movement. That's all of you. And he calls America to a recommitment to this cause. Now, in the entire presidency of Donald Trump, which has been the most pro-life administration to date, we have seen, because it's the proper moment right now for the pro-life movement, an emphasis on late-term abortion. And New Mexico, of course, is at the tip of the spear with this effort. It's because of a pedagogical principle, an educational principle, that you always go, when you want to teach somebody something, from the most obvious to the less obvious. And to teach America to reject abortion, we have to start with what is most obvious and what most people, including people who call themselves pro-choice or Democrats, including the fact that, look, they realize killing a baby in the last months of pregnancy is wrong, no matter what you think about abortions in the earlier stages. We need to continue to make that our starting point. There we have the agreement of most legislators. You also have a key opportunity here now in New Mexico, and you're a sign for the rest of the country that this is the moment to expose the extremism of the Democrats. Don't think it's a good thing for them that they are in power in so many ways federally, because they have just enough rope to hang themselves, if you know what I mean. Show the extremism. It's going to backfire big time, and you're an example to all the rest of the states as well. So Mark, and to all my colleagues that are going to speak tonight, thank you, and we're with you all the way.
Thank you, Father Frank. It's such a blessing to see you again and have you join us to inspire us here in the land of enchantment. Thank you again. God bless. Okay, so next up, we're going to move right along. We've got a lot of speakers, so I'm not going to wait any longer. I asked a good friend of mine to jump on and to kind of set the tone for this event and motivate us to take action, which is my good friend, the founder of the Global 40 Days for Life movement, Mr. David B. Wright. Thank you for joining us, David.
Oh, Mark, I wouldn't have missed this for anything, and I am so excited to be joining you. And that may sound a little bit counterintuitive at first, because think about what Father Frank Pavone just shared, those words that were shared by President Donald Trump about the Sanctity of Life Day, and contrast those with what came out of Washington, D.C. today with now inaugurated President Joe Biden saying that Roe versus Wade was a wonderful thing and issuing a statement saying he wants to codify or enshrine Roe versus Wade in the law of the land and strike down many state laws. And you can say, David, why should we be optimistic? Why should we be hopeful here? I remember, and Father Frank, if you're still on, I remember a little over 12 years ago, you and I were walking down the streets in Washington, D.C., right on the eve of the election where, unfortunately, Barack Obama was elected, and of course, 8 years of a pro-abortion administration there. And it was pretty apparent at that point that was how the election was going to go. And Father Frank and I were talking back and forth. And one of the things that we recognized was, if abortion ended and there was a pro-life president, a pro-life House of Representatives, a pro-life Senate, a pro-life state legislature, a pro-life U.S. Senate, a pro-life Supreme Court, where would everybody give the credit? They would give the credit to those political institutions of government. But if every odd was stacked against us, with man, this looked impossible, and progress was made and abortion ended, people would recognize that God Almighty was the one at work. With him, all things are possible. And even from that moment, 12 years ago, watching all of the pro-life progress that was made under the Obama-Biden administration, in spite of all the attempts to advance the abortion agenda by that administration and by majorities in the House and Senate over different times, it was unprecedented. That was the explosive growth of 40 Days for Life. That was the growth of things like Sidewalk Advocates for Life. It was during that time that some of the efforts began that led to the efforts that are now bearing tremendous fruit in New Mexico. And just back in December, Mark, I remember when you and I and many of the leaders who will be sharing on this call and other New Mexico pro-life leaders all gathered together to pray, to strategize, and to talk about this situation. And people were talking about how New Mexico is sometimes cited as being the last in various different indicators among the states, and not the good ones. And they were talking about how on late-term abortion, as Father Frank just articulated, that New Mexico is one of the worst in the country. And they said, you know what? It's because that climate is so bad, where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. When we make progress as a pro-life movement in New Mexico, when we begin to see abortion facilities close as they've been closing, lives saved as they are being saved, people will realize that God Almighty is at work, and it will lead to not only the growth of the pro-life movement, it will lead to people turning their hearts and minds to God Almighty. And I want you to recognize that that's the purpose of our opportunity, this time together, not only on this webcast, and thank you, Mark, and everybody who put this together, but we have an opportunity here to learn about what's going on right now. We have an opportunity to participate throughout this entire event. Do not disconnect. Do not multitask. If you got a phone going, set it aside. Turn off your notifications, engage in this event, participate in this event, share what you learn here tonight with everybody you know. But most importantly, when this event ends, take action, take constructive action. Because right now, in the midst of this climate, as we look at the shifting in Washington, D.C., as we look at the positive shifting on the U.S. Supreme Court, we realize the landscape is shifting. There are right now active cases that have been filed that are going to go to the U.S. Supreme Court that will directly confront Roe v. Wade, cause the case to be revisited. They may erode, and some of them could potentially even overturn Roe versus Wade. But when that happens, not if, when, all that will do is throw the abortion decision back to the states. And that's why what you're doing tonight is more important than ever. It's more important that we organize locally in our cities, our towns, our communities. It's more important that we network together as an entire state. And it's more important that what you do in New Mexico sends a beacon of hope and light to be a Cinderella story as you become a pro-life state, even in the midst of the challenges that you face. New Mexico can do it. The land of enchantment can inspire the rest of the nation to see what the pro-life movement is really made of. So embrace this event, dive into this event, and Mark, thank you so much for hosting it and for having me here.
Thank you. And how amazing is that? Can you imagine if the state of New Mexico, late-term abortion capital of the nation, in spite of all the obstacles and the lack of laws and the restrictions of the administrations, becomes that Cinderella story, and we see abortion in because of you taking action tonight is when it can start. Now, if you don't already see it on the page, on the event page, there should be some yellow buttons below with some action items to download an action guide. If you don't see it, refresh the page, and the video should pick up right about the same time where it left off. If you're watching on Facebook or something like that, head over to NewMexicoMarchForLife.com, get onto the webcast page, and you're going to see some really important action items that are going to be very critical as I bring on our next guest. So here to tell us about the environment as we come into this and understand the state of the legislation here in the anti-life climate that we live in is a good friend of mine, the founder and executive director of the New Mexico Alliance for Life, Ms. Elisa Martinez. Thank you, Elisa. Oh, you're muted. Go ahead and hit the unmute button.
Sorry.
There you go. Go for it.
Thank you so much again for hosting this event. And thank you for everyone who's joining us this evening for this critical emergency webcast on what you can do to help us defeat radical anti-life legislation. I'm going to go through quickly how did we get here as a state? Why is New Mexico known for late-term abortion? And it goes back to 1969. The New Mexico legislature passed the Criminal Abortion Act, which basically had some criminal penalties for abortions that were performed except for the life of the mother. And since then, 1973 rolled around, and as we know, today marks the tragic anniversary of Roe versus Wade. Roe and subsequent cases created a right to abortion. They created this right out of whole cloth, as Justice Thomas would state, that allows for abortion throughout all 9 months of pregnancy for any reason. This is the law of the land that is being celebrated today by pro-abortion Democrats and President Biden, in fact. But we know that what Roe did allow for were some states, or for states to be able to put some protections in for the safety of the woman, as well as the unborn child after the point of viability. And we know that the point of viability now is around 21 weeks or 5 months. Since 1973, which again, we have that tragic anniversary, New Mexico has never addressed the issue with new laws or protections except for what is known as a partial birth abortion ban. That was passed in the early 2000s, which outlawed a particular barbaric procedure of partial birth abortions. But since then, New Mexico has done nothing to address this issue as a state, which is why we are now the late-term abortion capital of the country. 43 states have some type of term limit on abortion. again, except for New Mexico and a handful of states. Since then, additionally, abortionists have created a new method to kill unborn babies. It's called induction abortion, which involves the delivery of a baby and a woman going through delivery from anywhere to 3 to 7 days. And this is a very dangerous procedure that is taking place at least 5 days a week here in New Mexico. And this is what we are dealing with. This is what is on the table, that these abortionists have moved into our state to set up shop in order to basically circumvent laws in other states. And those other states are importing women in order to obtain, an elective late-term abortion with little to no oversight here. Some facts for our audience today, very quickly. The majority of late-term abortions and the majority of abortions are elective. 98% are elective. That means they are not medically necessary. They're not for the health or life of the mother, or even rape exceptions. So women travel again from all over the country to get these abortions. And the bill that we're talking about today, which is SB 10, Senate Bill 10, would seek to erase this entire criminal abortion law off of the books and not replace it with any protections whatsoever for women, for the unborn children, and for the medical community. And back in 2016, New Mexico Alliance for Life documented 21 injuries to women, 21 medical emergencies that took place here at the late-term abortion clinic. And this procedure later in pregnancy, like Father Pavone mentioned, the late-term abortions after 21 weeks carry a 90 times greater risk of death for women. So these are very dangerous procedures. And going back to this bill, SB 10 would put no protections in place whatsoever for women. And I'm going to go quickly through what it's going to do to the current state of affairs. Not only is it going to codify abortion up to birth and make that the state law if Roe v. Wade were to get struck down, but it's going to remove the state's only conscience protection that would prevent hospital and medical staff from having to perform an abortion. And so there are no overarching or explicit federal or state laws that would allow for those protections. Lastly, again, it doesn't protect women, and this is not a pro-woman bill. This is a pro-abortion corporation bill that's going to further empower these corporations to act with negligence and recklessly in the areas of abortion throughout all 9 months of pregnancy. And in closing, I'm going to encourage people to stay alert. You want to make sure that you're signing up for these emails. These committee hearings the first one's going to take place on Monday. As many of you know, we need you making those calls and emails, contacting your legislators. And there is a solution. We will be introducing pro-life legislation. The legislators will be introducing those bills next week. One will address all of the concerns that New Mexicans have about this issue in the areas of late-term abortion, protections, and parental involvement, as well as medical standards of care for the practice of some of these abortions. So we look forward to working with all of our partners on this call. And I want to thank you again, Mark, for hosting us and for everyone working to fight this tragedy here in New Mexico.
Thank you, Elisa, so much. These things cannot be repeated enough. In fact, in that PDF action guide, step number 1 is a list of those talking points that Lisa just outlined that you need to know about Senate Bill 10 so that you can remember that. The next page goes over HB 57, which is the assisted suicide law. And for this, we actually brought in not just a national, but an international expert coming to us from Canada, as Alex Shandenberg with the, remind me the name of the organization.
Euthanasia Prevention Coalition.
That's correct. Thank you. Please let us know some, and I'm going to give Alex a little more time because he's really the expert when it comes to this particular bill. So it's all yours, Alex.
Thank you very much, Mark. This is an amazing event, and I'm going to try and go quickly because it's a fair amount of information. But HB 47, this bill is actually very similar to the previous bill that came out in 2019, which was HB 90. But what happened is Deborah Armstrong, who's the Democrat who's been promoting assisted suicide now for several legislative sessions in New Mexico, she actually toned it down a little bit. But that's important for us to know from the beginning. But I'll cover it very quickly. HB 90 and HB 47 are very interesting, but HB 47, what it does is it doesn't limit assisted suicide to physicians. So right off the bat, what it's doing is it's taking this radical position, and we have to point that out that New Mexico would be legalizing assisted suicide in a way that is very different than, for instance, Oregon and other places that have sadly already legalized assisted suicide. What they would allow is not only physicians to do assisted suicide, but also physician assistants, osteopathic physicians, and nurses who are registered in advanced practice. So what they're saying is they're going to expand the list of providers to provide assisted suicide if they pass this in New Mexico. And there's a couple reasons for that. Doctors don't want to do assisted suicide. So if you have more providers of assisted suicide, it's easier then to get it. I'm going to make another comment a bit later about that. It also expands who can counsel a person. So this is a very minor part of the bill because counseling is only done when the assisted suicide practitioner is thinking that the person isn't able to properly consent. Someone might be very depressed. They might have early stage dementia, etc. So then they send them. In all other states, they're sent to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. But in the case of the New Mexico bill, they added master social worker, psychiatric nurse practitioner, professional clinical mental health counselor. So they've once again expanded who could be involved with counseling. And remember, this is about someone who then could be very depressed. Why would you need to send them for counseling? If they're very depressed, to a mental health counselor? It wouldn't make any sense to me. Nonetheless, this is what it's doing. Unlike other legislation, this also this bill is very interesting because it removes the requirement of a second healthcare provider approving it if the person is in hospice or palliative care. All other states require that this has to be approved by 2 physicians. But in the New Mexico bill, it's saying, well, if someone is in hospice, they would not need a second approval. So what that means is, once again, is that they're lessening the requirement for someone to die by assisted suicide. HB 47 is also different because what it does is it only has a 48-hour waiting period. So in all other states, they have what you call a 15-day waiting period. This only requires a 48-day waiting period, but on top of it, they can waive the 48-hour waiting period if they think the person's nearing death. Now, why is this so important? Well, first of all, the data shows that a person's will to live will fluctuate over time. But this bill allows what you would call a same-day death. Same-day death means that someone could, on a bad day, request assisted suicide, and obviously they'd be, reasonably fairly sick at this point, but nonetheless, they could request assisted suicide and die on the same day, which means your bad day becomes your last day. It's very important that this bill, that we recognize how bad this is. It tramples on conscience rights, this bill. This bill requires healthcare providers to, if they're not going to be involved in assisted suicide, if they think it's wrong to be involved with prescribing lethal drugs to cause the death of their patient, this bill requires them to refer the individual to a healthcare provider who's able or willing to carry out the individual's request. So this is a form of direct cooperation. And physicians who don't want to kill you will also say, well, I don't want to be involved with it either. Therefore, this direct cooperation's then trampling on their conscience rights. So this is a pretty extreme bill, HB 47, the assisted suicide bill. And these assisted suicide bills are not what they appear to be. They sell you assisted suicide. They say to you, oh, well, it's all about eliminating suffering. And many people fear a bad death. So they're thinking of, well, maybe assisted suicide is a good idea because I fear a bad death. But you have to understand how this actually works. There's a little known secret that the Medical Express reported in September 8th, 2020. The Medical Express reported there's a little known secret not publicized by the advocates of aid in dying, and that is that most deaths might be speedy, but some deaths are very slow. Some patients linger for 6 or 9 hours or more than 3 days. People don't talk about this. It's how the reality of assisted suicide. An article published in the Seattle Times on March 5th, 2017, it described these experiments that are being done by the assisted suicide lobby doctors in order to find cheaper ways to kill. It's important to talk about because people are going to talk about assisted suicide. Well, how was it done? Well, the first experimenting that was done on people in Washington State, they used a drug and they found it was far too harsh and it was burning patients' mouths and throats, causing them to scream in pain. Now remember, why is this important? They're saying, oh, we want a peaceful death. Well, obviously speaking, palliative care can provide a peaceful death, but here, assisted suicide caused a horrible death. They also talk about the fact that people have lived 31 hours in one case in Washington State before dying. 31 hours lingering as they're dying by assisted suicide. These are important things because people don't think about these issues. They're only thinking about, I want to escape a bad death. HB 47 is an extreme assisted suicide bill. It allows lesser trained healthcare providers to approve and prescribe lethal assisted suicide drugs. It has a 48-hour waiting period that can be waived. So in fact, really it has no waiting period. It tramples on conscience rights for healthcare professionals. This is very important. And the other thing that you have to remember, HB 90, which was the one in 2019, it had said that that it allowed assisted suicide for psychiatric conditions, as well as it had an undefined terminal prognosis, and it allowed assisted suicide to be approved via telemedicine. So what I'm saying is, not only is this an extreme bill, but HB 90 in 2019 was more extreme, but that's the intention of Deborah Armstrong. So if you pass this bill now, which should never be passed, if this were to pass, I guarantee you in 2 years, she's coming back to expand your assisted suicide in New Mexico. You must protect New Mexico people from assisted suicide. This is a terrible idea.
Wow. Thank you so much, Alex. I'll let you take a breath and get to bed. I know you're a couple hours ahead of us, so I appreciate you calling in so much. I look forward to speaking with you further in the future. God bless you. There you have it, folks. You've heard about these two different bills that are being presented. Step number 2 in that PDF action guide is going over these talking points that Alex just relayed so that you can pass that information on. And so here's about the bills, and now we're going to move right into the consequences of these and about abortion with attorney and a good friend and brother from Abortion on Trial, Mr. Mike Seibel.
Thank you, Mark. I'm glad to be here today with all my friends who are speaking out about this issue. We've mentioned that New Mexico is the late-term capital of North America, essentially, but I want to kind of refine that term. We're also the back alley abortion clinic for the entire United States. And why I say that is we have to look at the current state. Abortion is not being treated as healthcare here in New Mexico in any respect whatsoever. And if we go into abortion on trial, where we don't use speculation or undercover videos, but rather hard evidence, sworn testimony, and documents that are straight from the court files, you will see that New Mexico is already practicing back alley abortion, reckless, dangerous procedures that are hurting and maiming women. And if you go into abortion on trial, you'll see, and I hope you do, because there's great evidence of what is actually going on. You'll see Curtis Boyd admitting to having no limit on when an abortion can be had. You'll see Carmen Landau, a late-term abortionist, indignant about the fact that she doesn't refer women who are experiencing complications to the emergency room. You will see her go through 17 people who were injured with major complications and sent to the University of New Mexico Hospital, with one who has actually died, Keisha Atkins, as a result of the negligent practices there. And you will see them violating the standards of care here in New Mexico by conducting outpatient late-term induction abortions outside the hospital, which is required in every other state to be in the hospital, and in hotel rooms, specifically Shelley Sella, who did a abortion on a 12-year-old little girl in the Howard Johnson's hotel room toilet. So with that in this situation, we are in an extreme practice of it's not medicine that the abortion industry is undertaking to the committee. And at the exact same time as that, they're arguing to the committee that we need the repeal of this abortion law because it'll have women arrested. I will be defending a woman in Las Cruces Magistrate Court who is arrested at the request of the abortionist because she dared to be upset about the 2 botched abortions she underwent. Abortion is simply not healthcare, and abortionists are the only people arresting women right now, not pro-lifers. Senate Bill 10 will take essentially the back room, the back alley practices and make them barbaric. Senate Bill 10 erases physician licensure in this situation, and it'll lead to untrained and unqualified personnel doing 2 abortions. It also eliminates the requirement that an abortion be done by a medically necessary and appropriate procedure. which means the abortionists can do whatever they want. They can continue these horrible, reckless, dangerous, outlandish ways that they're doing the abortions here in the state of New Mexico. This is simply unacceptable. And finally, it removes conscience clauses, as both Elisa and Alex mentioned. But not only will it possibly subject people to losing their jobs, but it's going to require physicians, pregnancy centers, healthcare providers to transfer care of abortion-minded women to the abortionists themselves. Otherwise, they will be subject to a $5,000 fine or sanctions in this situation, Mark, which is just simply unacceptable for our community. It'll have a horrible impact on doctors. So this particular bill is absolutely dangerous. It's time for us all to step up. It's time for us all to fight in this situation. And women have been fighting this. And one woman in particular who has been fighting this is here with us today. She is a courageous woman. She has a story of redemption. She has a story that is passionate. She was the first to file against Curtis Boyd in one of his lawsuits out here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and is the subject of the 2016 second criminal referral against Curtis Boyd and UNM by the Select Panel of Infant Lives. So today, I would love for you guys to listen to the story of the courageous Jessica Duran. Jessica?
Hi, thank you for having me. So I currently have a lawsuit against the late-term abortion clinic, Southwestern Women's Options, here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My story starts in August of 2012 when I was faced with an unexpected pregnancy with my second child. At first I was scared, but the baby's father assured me that everything would be okay. 2 days later, he was pressuring me to have an abortion. I had no support from my mother or father, and I was already struggling as a single mother to my 3-year-old son. Despite everyone insisting that I have the abortion, I continued my pregnancy and I started going to my prenatal appointments. During this time, I was repeatedly told by the baby's father to abort my child or he would kick down my door and make me lose it. I was terrified to the point of not staying in my own home. Along with his threats, my mother kept pushing me for the abortion as well. At this point, I was already 3 months along, but it took me 5 appointments until I went through with the abortion. The first was missed. The second and third I canceled. The fourth, I was told to leave and consider adoption because I was not going to be allowed to do it in the emotional state I was in. And the fifth, I hid all emotions, telling myself that this is what I had to do, that, this baby wasn't wanted by anybody but me at this point. But I could not hide my feelings. I was taken to the back for counseling and my phone was taken away. During this time, I started going back and forth with my decision. My mother showed up at the clinic demanding to speak to me before I did anything. And I was told to hurry up because they had other appointments. And when they closed the door on my mother, I was given misoprostol, which dilates your cervix. And I didn't have the pills in my mouth for more than a few seconds before I spit them out and stated that I could not do this. I was then taken to another back room and was recounseled by myself. The staff made sure to remind me of all the reasons that I was scared to have the baby. And after what felt like hours in that room by myself, I was given misoprostol again. And I refused the anesthesia for the procedure. In a matter of minutes, my baby was gone. I wish I had known the people that I do now from the pro-life community. I wish that someone had been there to tell me that my love was enough for my child. Because abortion does not empower women. Abortion kills twice. It hurts the mother just as much as it hurts the child. And I think that's something that we need to start getting out there, is that women who have had abortions are hurting, and they're hurting silently because nobody wants to listen to them. Nobody wants to hear it, but it's happening. And coming out with my story, you'd be surprised how many women have come to me privately and just said, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story because I thought I was alone. And I have allowed them to have a voice, even if it's just a voice between me and them, to say that they are also hurting, that abortion has done nothing but cause them pain.
Wow. Thank you, Jessica. This is my first time. I've been hearing about you. It's my first time meeting you. It's a pleasure. I wasn't ready for that. And just on behalf of myself and the pro-life movement, I'm sorry that we weren't doing more for you at that time.
You guys are amazing now. And thank you for putting this whole thing together. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for your courage in speaking out. All right, folks. So you've heard it. Now you'll notice at the bottom of the screen we've got phone numbers going by. These are the phone numbers for the state representatives who are part of the Senate Public Affairs Committee, the senators, and those are the numbers that we need to call. At the moment, it's after hours, so you will get messaging, answering machines, leave messages, and call again tomorrow. You will get a recording of this in your email. Share the video. It'll be on Facebook. Spread this video far and wide, and make sure we call those numbers. That is the step number 3 in the action guide. Also has phone numbers and emails. Step number 4, by the way, has a link to find your specific legislators. Everyone has one senator and one representative that you need to familiarize yourself with. Call them and stay in contact with them repeatedly through multiple mediums throughout this, and tell them that you are their constituent, and that you want them to vote no and that you oppose these bills. Now, you heard from someone who has been harmed by the abortion industry, and we have these amazing pregnancy resource centers who help women from making these mistakes. And here from the CareNet Pregnancy Center of Santa Fe is the amazing Roberta Cheek to share a little bit about from her perspective of how this industry harms women.
Thank you so much for having me. We had a woman come to our center. She was 17 years old, a young girl, and she was scared and pregnant like so many of our clients. She thought that abortion was her only option. After meeting with us, she decided to carry her child to term, just like over 250 clients who have come to CareNet have chosen to do. I recently received a text from that mother telling me that her child turned 10 years old. As Mark mentioned, my name is Roberta Cheek. I'm the Executive Director for CareNet of Santa Fe, Espanola. And what we do every day at CareNet is that we want to give hope. I've been asked to share on the impact of abortion from the perspective of the Pregnancy Center. As a woman who supported Planned Parenthood for many years and was very ambivalent about abortion, which, by the way, I believe many people still are, including Christians, I now see abortion as the reality of what it really is. It's the ending of a life of a child who will never see her 10th birthday, who will never feel sun on her face, who will never experience their first Christmas. What we do every day is life and death. It's like working at a pediatric cancer center, where every day you're fighting for life and some still die. Our job at the pregnancy centers is to be pro-information. 1 out of every 3 women in America have had an abortion, and most of them had that abortion with little or no information. When we give education and we give support to a woman in crisis, she is more likely to carry to term. After all, choice with no information is really no choice. Again, our goal is to give them help. However, if you're talking about the impact to the pregnancy center and how it affects us, is that many times individuals still choose to have an abortion. It breaks your heart to see a 10-week-old baby moving on the screen of an ultrasound, and that individual still chooses to have an abortion. So when you talk about the impact to the pregnancy centers, it's a very psychological job that we do that we could not do without the help of the Lord. We fight every day against bills like SB 10 because at the pregnancy centers, we know that when an individual terminates a baby, they are not just terminating a baby, they are terminating a legacy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Roberta. You guys are amazing. Pregnancy Center, those staff there and the volunteers are just my favorite people in the world. I mean, really almost single-handedly out fighting to offer an alternative to the abortion industry and really pick up the pieces left in the wake of the abortion industry. Pregnancy centers as well as post-abortion healing ministries such as Rachel's Vineyard. And so here's a very dear friend of mine that I've worked with here in the southern part of the state, Miss Esther Garcia, who has a story as well to share with you.
If only I knew then what I know now. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight on behalf of millions of women silently suffering from post-abortion trauma. You see, 23 years ago, I walked into an abortion clinic and was sold a botched abortion. A few years after having the abortion, I had to be rushed to the ER because the abortion was not done properly and parts of my baby were still inside of my uterus. Even more than the extremely painful procedure itself, this was very traumatizing. When I called the abortion clinic, they washed their hands of any responsibility. The next 13 years, I was going through life existing and not living. I completely suppressed that memory way deep down inside. I dropped out of college. I started partying and drinking till I would become unconscious. Every single relationship I was in failed, including a marriage. I allowed myself to be used by men physically and financially. I became pregnant 2 more times out of wedlock. I was stuck in a vicious cycle, trying to fill a void that I didn't even realize existed. Then I found a post-abortion recovery program called Rachel's Vineyard. This literally saved my life. That weekend, I was able to grieve the loss of my baby in a safe place. I was able to name my baby and offer him up to the Lord. I was able to give him the dignity that I took from him out of fear and making an uninformed decision. Since then, I have met many other post-abortive women also living a self-destructive life. I have met women who were victims of rape and incest and quickly learned that they were able to find healing from the assaults of rape and incest, but their abortion affected them in a much deeper way. Post-abortion syndrome includes drinking, drug abuse, multiple sexual partners, depression, anxiety, anger, infertility, suicide attempts, failed relationships, eating disorders, multiple abortions, PTSD, and so many other self-destructive behaviors. Society tells us women that it's our body and our choice. We are told that abortion is empowering, that we are in control. They don't tell us that it is scientifically proven that from the moment of conception, as women, we begin to bond with our unborn children. We are already a mom at that point. And what they don't tell us is one day, perhaps right away, or maybe many, many years down the line, something will trigger us to realize that we killed our baby. They definitely don't tell you that for the rest of your life, you will live with the question of what if. You will wonder if your child would have looked like you, what their personality would have been like, or who they would have been in this world. Then the devastating realization comes that you didn't just end one life, but an entire generation of lives that would have followed. They won't tell you that every year, on the anniversary of your abortion or the anniversary of your due date, you will mourn and grieve your baby that you so long to hold. In the last 11 years of coordinating Rachel's Vineyard retreats and leading a post-abortion support group, I have yet to meet any post-abortive woman who feels empowered by the decision they made. I do encounter shame, regret, mental illness, alcoholism, drug addiction, and all the other symptoms related directly to post-abortion trauma and now post-abortion syndrome. Now, please don't confuse my words or get me wrong. We know that we have a very merciful God that is there absolutely for hope and healing on after an abortion. And although oftentimes it's a very lonely and tough road to travel, remember, healing is a journey, not a destination. If only I knew then what I know now. My David Michael will be 23 years old. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Esther invited me a few months ago to help with as a facilitator of a Rachel's Vineyard retreat, and it was the hardest 3 days of my entire life. And so I've seen that pain firsthand that she's talking about. A couple quick updates. Yes, some of you are mentioning in the chat. These are the phone numbers at the bottom for the senators of the Senate Hearing Committee that is the first committee that has to approve the bills to go forward. So yes, call them all with the 505 prefix. And then there's an update, actually, insider update, that the pro-abortion up-to-birth phone calls in support of SB 10 are currently outnumbering the phone calls against this SB 10 bill. So please make those phone calls. They are all tallied and counted, the messages, all of it. So call now, call tomorrow, get your friends, share this information, get as many phone calls going as possible. Now, we've been talking about the need to help women. And again, we have another one of our amazing pregnancy centers in the state, a dear friend of mine, Ms. Dominique Davis from Project Defending Life, about what we need to do to help women. So thank you so much, Dominique.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you everybody that's on this webcast. And I'm honestly having a really hard time following Esther and Jessica and their stories, and I'm just so sad to know that women have just been devastated by abortion. And but I'm so glad to know that there is healing involved. So, as I oversee a pregnancy medical clinic, I want to share with you the impact that centers like ours have on the community. At any given time, there are about 2,700 pregnancy centers and pregnancy medical clinics in the U.S. alone that are offering hope to women facing crisis pregnancies. These centers and clinics provide an array of services from pregnancy testing, ultrasound, support groups, parenting classes, even financial and material support. And our goal is to be the first place families at risk for abortion goes to, so we can empower each and every one of them to choose life for their unborn baby. We are ever evolving to meet the needs of women experiencing unplanned pregnancies, and we see this with more and more pregnancy centers who are offering medical services. This is why I truly believe that pregnancy centers have created a legacy of life and love, and they stand the test of time regardless of good or bad abortion laws that are in place. Because no matter what, we will be meeting women and men who are considering abortion wherever they are and minister to them. We will be on the sidewalk of abortion facilities. We will have a presence on the internet through social media and marketing ads. And we will provide care and support and hope to these women and men in our centers. We are truly on the front lines of the abortion pandemic. The Charlotte Lozier Institute released the report on the impact of pregnancy centers across the U.S. And in 2019, the total value of our services that we offer for free was nearly $267 million. This means tens of thousands of babies are saved from abortion every year because of pregnancy centers. And we need your help because we cannot do any of this without you. And let me tell you why. If abortion is codified in New Mexico, we will continue to see unregulated and unsafe abortions as we do right now. And I want to share a quick story. 2 weeks ago, a couple came to our clinic for an ultrasound as well as to get their options. And the young woman thought that she was about 13 weeks, somewhere in the first trimester. And the ultrasound revealed that she was 5 months along, meaning her baby was about 20 weeks gestation. And unfortunately, this couple left our clinic still seriously considering abortion for their viable baby because New Mexico allows abortion at any stage. This would be considered a late-term abortion. And if we didn't allow abortions up until birth, this couple would have never considered it for their baby, who is now past 5 months gestation. And even worse, this is not an uncommon experience for us, and it's devastating to know what is happening to these women and unborn children as they leave our clinic. And here's another reason. Last year, pregnancy centers had to respond to a huge increase of demand for abortion due to shutdowns, job loss, economic uncertainty due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We also saw so many women coming from all over the U.S. to New Mexico because our abortion facilities remained open while other states closed down theirs. Additionally, New Mexico joined 12 other states last year to allow abortion pill study to be conducted on our women. This is very risky and possibly deadly study that goes against FDA regulations for medical abortions. This study goes as far as mailing these pills to women just after one telemed appointment. And we are seeing a significant increase in women wanting these abortion pills who are coming to our clinic. So like I said, now more than ever, we need your support. First and foremost, we need your prayers. Please be praying for us. We face the evils of abortion every day, and it definitely takes its toll. Second, we need your treasures. This can be money, time, or talent, even material donations. The $267 million we saved our communities is because we do not charge for any of our services. It is free to those we serve, but it does cost us. So your sacrificial gifts that we receive from you ensures we are serving families at risk for abortion every single day. Third, we need you to email and call the New Mexico legislators and tell them to vote no on Senate Bill 10. Pregnancy medical clinics are only able to operate if we have pro-life medical professionals. And if the conscious clause is repealed, we will lose these professionals who provide life-affirming, life-saving care to pregnant women and unborn children. And if the abortion ban is repealed, it will further protect the late-term abortion industry here in Albuquerque. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody's time tonight. Good night, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Dominique. You know, you said something that was very true. You mentioned that, but without these conscience clause, we're going to lose good healthcare providers. And I thought of somebody actually who I invited on the call tonight, who is a friend of mine in the southern part of the state, president of Students for Life NMSU, Marcos Lares. And he tell us what is it your profession that you're going into, and how might these laws, if passed, affect that, Marcos?
Yeah. So, like I said, my name is Marcos, and I'm a student at New Mexico State University. I'm studying genetics and biotechnology, and for the purpose of going into the medical field, I want to attend the College of Burrell that is on the same campus as NMSU. It's on the side. And for me, this bill does everything against my beliefs. And not only does it do that, but it goes against my First Amendment right to religious liberty. And as a student right now, I'm applying to medical school. I want to pursue a medical degree in more specific in the field of obstetrics and gynecology. However, this bill has everything that the abortion industry wants, and it wants to indoctrinate medical students so that they believe that the only option that they can offer women is abortion. And that is simply not true. There are other options that us future medical professionals and the medical professionals that we are seeing today, they can offer way more than that. I want to be a pillar for women who are hurt, who are suffering, who are in fear, who find themselves alone, who have no one. I want to be that man so that they can hold on to. I want to be that person. You know, the abortion industry always talks about the relationship with a woman and her doctor. And I want to be that doctor that protects her, that shows her that she has other options and that she doesn't have to kill her child to succeed, and much less to protect her health, because we can save both baby and doctor. And it just comes to show how the abortion industry is on the rise, and the pro-life generation is here to stop it. We're going to do door knocking. We're going to do so much more with political activism, and we're going to step up to the plate here in New Mexico. So I congratulate you all who are standing up for life, and please do everything in your power to stop this bill, because it's not ending here. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Marcos. Okay, real quick, I have a brief recording. She wasn't able to be on the call with us tonight. Dear friend of mine, though, an amazing story, and she actually has a book coming out very soon called Survivor, about her story of being a survivor of a twin abortion. Good friend of mine is Claire Colwell, with a brief message for you as we move on.
Hey there, friends in New Mexico. I am so excited about what y'all are joining together to do tonight, and I just wanted to encourage all of you. As many of you know, I am a twin abortion survivor. I met my birth mother 11 years ago, found out that I had survived her D&E dismemberment abortion that successfully aborted my twin. And as you can imagine, that was the most shocking moment of my life. I never imagined that I would meet my birth mother and found out that I survived an abortion procedure, that I survived something that was meant to take my life. But as I sat face to face with my birth mother and learned the truth behind my birth, behind her abortion procedure, I realized that there was a purpose, that My survival, the fact that I was a twin, meant that you today can look at my face and you're literally looking at my twin. You're literally looking at that unborn child. And so it puts a face and a name and a story with what you're fighting for there in New Mexico. And so I just want to encourage you to continue to fight, to be bold in your stance for truth, to be bold in the ways that you serve women and families, and get involved in pro-life organizations, organizations that are doing something for life in your area, because it truly matters. It matters for someone like me. And so that means, because I'm just an ordinary person like you, that it matters for someone like you. And so I just want to encourage you to keep fighting. Over the past 11 years, I have seen not only what a story of an abortion survivor can do for people, how it can humanize the issue of abortion, but I've seen what God can do through people like you. And I believe that we are 100% changing the way that our culture views abortion, the way that it values life. And together, I believe that we will make abortion unthinkable. And so from one abortion survivor to all of you, the people that are literally being the hands and feet of Jesus, that are fighting this fight on the front lines, I want to say thank you. And please don't stop. God bless you all.
I love Claire's story, and I mean, how amazing is that to look at her and think you are looking at the face of the victim of an abortion in her twin. Her book is Survivor, an Abortion Survivor's Surprising Story of Choosing Forgiveness and Finding Redemption, available for pre-order. And a good friend of mine that I chose to mention that book just because she's so amazing. While we're at it, we also have one other recording too. She wasn't able to be on with us tonight, but we were very excited to have a message for you from U.S. Congresswoman Yvette Harrell.
Hey everybody, it's Yvette Harrell. I'm here in Washington, D.C. in a conference room right off the House floor, but I'm so excited to participate in the virtual March for Life. And hopefully next year we can work together and open up our states and our nation and be here in person. But I wanted to thank all of you for standing for what is right, and that is the sanctity of life. You know, as a state representative, I carried many bills and sponsored bills that would protect life. The 20-week ban on abortion, the parental notification, the Baby Born Alive Act, and several others. I believe in my heart that life begins at conception, and we have to fight for life. I believe we have a moral responsibility to speak up for those that can't speak for themselves. Here in Washington, you'd be happy to know that I've already co-sponsored 12 pieces of legislation that affect life. I've signed on to no taxpayer dollars being used for abortion. I've signed on to the bill that would actually eliminate pain-capable abortion. All of these bills, all of these commonalities that we share, it is my honor to have brought my pro-life values and my Christian values to Washington, D.C. and be representing life and speaking up for those that don't have a voice. So again, I could not be more honored to have been asked to join you today. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for understanding the moral responsibility that we all share. And like you, I'm celebrating our ability to use our voices collectively and speak for those who can't speak for themselves. Have a blessed day, and thank you for letting me be a part of this process with you.
Okay, so we have some amazing representatives who are defending life, and a lot of people, look at this and we say, okay, we've got a lot of amazing legislators who are actually planning an amazing event. We had so many people who are wanting to be on this and speaking to you tonight that our pro-life legislators in New Mexico actually were able to come together and put together, after all, an in-person event. So they are going to be working on an event on February 2nd in Santa Fe at the state capitol. So keep your eyes and ears out for that information because this is all the information. We're going to be working on this in the meantime, and then we're going to go and make a big presence. And so plan that. Put February 2nd on your calendars in Santa Fe to show up and say New Mexico is pro-life and we will not tolerate this on our watch and in our backyard. But I also want to point out that this is not just something that is just a Republican-only issue, even though that is the party of a lot of our speakers and those representatives who are defending life. This is something that is a bipartisan humanitarian issue, and so on that, I would I'm very looking forward to introducing to you Teresa Bukovac, who is the president of Democrats for Life. And I was just watching some of your videos earlier today, Teresa. I love what you do. Let us know what people can do to help this cause of life, please.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. I know that, the fight that you guys are fighting there in New Mexico is so similar to the fight that we're fighting here in San Francisco. In addition to my work with Democrats for Life of America, I also I founded and am the executive director of Pro-Life San Francisco. We are fighting the abortion industry in one of the most pro-abortion places on earth. I'm also an atheist, I'm a liberal, I'm a feminist, so I am a living testament to the reality that literally anyone can be a part of the pro-life movement and that everyone should be a part of the pro-life movement. I know that, right now things can seem, very hard for the pro-life movement. We know we have an uphill battle. We know that there's a lot of disappointment in the pro-life movement right now, but I am here to inject a little bit of hope. And while, we look at the Democratic Party and we say, this is the most extreme leadership we've ever seen on abortion, which is absolutely true. We know from statistics that the constituency of the Democratic Party, especially as it relates to late-term abortion, is more pro-life than ever. And so we have this discrepancy. And when we're looking at the issue of abortion as a whole, we know that the Democratic Party is the main source of power for the abortion industry. We also know that at least 21 million registered Democrats self-identify as being pro-life, and close to 60% of Democrats do not support abortion beyond the age of viability. So it is about giving visibility to pro-life Democrats. We are the biggest threat to the abortion industry. That's why you don't see us. That's why you are shocked that there are 21 million of us and that 60% of us are on the side of life when it comes to late-term abortion. We need visibility. And the abortion industry knows that targeting millennials is very important, and targeting left-leaning people, because millennials are the most left-leaning generation in the history of our country. But millennials are just as anti-abortion as their parents. And so the abortion industry uses immigration, police brutality, LGBT rights, and other issues that matter deeply to millennials in order to gain support for abortion that just really ultimately isn't there. We can win. Now, I have been to pro-life conferences across the nation, and I rarely see counter-protesters at these events that are headed, mostly by conservatives. But every single year at the annual Democrats for Life conference, there is significant opposition from the abortion industry. They've taken out expensive billboards. They have held press conferences outside our small conference. So while you might think Democrats for Life, that's not really a big deal, when it comes to the abortion industry, we are, because we have the power to end them. Giving voice to the 21 million pro-life Democrats in this country, showing that it's okay to be a Democrat and pro-life, is what is going to end abortion in America. We are the ones with the power to do it. And even those of you who don't identify with being progressive or liberal, it's about showing that the new idea is as similar to the old idea as possible. I've done quite a bit of research on what it takes to change people's minds, and unfortunately, facts doesn't really do it. Facts force people to double down on their preconceived opinion, even if they've been contradicted with facts. But what does help people to understand where we're coming from is to be able to see themselves in the movement, and to be able to see that the new idea that expanding human rights is a progressive value, that the values of equality, nonviolence, and non-discrimination are incompatible with abortion. And that's when we're going to see things really start to change. So it's been such an honor to be here to address you all. I know there's a lot of connections between San Francisco and New Mexico, especially as it relates to fetal tissue research and other very heavy topics. So please use me as a resource. Pro-Life San Francisco and Democrats for Life are here to help us win. So please feel free to reach out to me with any questions.
Thank you so much, Teresa. This is super important, and that we wanted to have you on because we want you to everyone to share this, friends, not just with your Republican friends, your Democrat friends as well, and say we need you to make phone calls and say, look, maybe we voted for some of these Democrat people in office, but you need to say this is too far, this is too much, and we won't tolerate this either. That's very, very important. We need those numbers and that help. And will those phone calls actually make an impact and a difference? Here to tell us a little bit about what you can do and the impact you can make is a very dear friend of mine, with Ethel Maharg with the New Mexico Right to Life. Thank you for joining us, Ethel.
Thank you, Mark, for having me. As always, I love being here with you. Thank you so much. Your friendship has been so precious to me. And I'm so excited to be here to let you all know that your voice really does matter. When we defeated HB 51, it was because all of you spoke. Every single one of you called your legislators. So we're asking you to do the exact same thing this year. And the numbers are scrolling down at the bottom of the screen so that you can see that you can go ahead and call each and every one of them and tell them that you oppose the bill. You are more than likely going to reach one of their receptionists. So what I'm asking you is to be very respectful to these people because they're just doing their job. Please ask them nicely. Tell them that you are opposed to the bill and that you want for the senators to vote no on this bill. So remember, be kind to these people as you're telling them, but make sure that you let them know. Now we are understanding because of the way that it is closed up and everything else that you may likely get a voicemail. So we are asking you to give your name and your address. And the reason that you want to give your name and address is because they track it. And so you could actually request that record and get that record that states the people and where they came. So that would provide evidence for us. So you want to make sure that you give your name and your address so they know which district that you're coming from. So also, I want to say that we will be allowed to provide testimony for the Senate hearing on Monday, but they're going to limit us to only 10 of us, unfortunately. Nonetheless, we need everyone to send in their stories. We need doctors, we need nurses, we definitely need medical professionals because this is really going to greatly impact them. If you are a medical professional and you're opposed to this bill, we need you and we need your testimony. We need 10 people, medical professionals. We also need women like the women that we've heard today that have had abortions and how it has impacted their lives. And we need your testimonies that we can provide to these senators so that they can make a decision. And like they said, right now they're hearing more from the pro-choice side than they are from us. So folks, we need to get on the phones. We need to get on our computers. We need to email everybody. And then I want to say this, take heart. It may seem like we're losing, but, it seemed like that a couple of years ago. And, I want everybody to be hopeful because just because it looks like we're losing doesn't mean that we are. I was asked by a reporter whether or not we were going to lose. And I said, well, we'll see, won't we? Now, Senator Scherer has asked that all of us pray at 2:00 on Monday when the committee is going to be hearing this bill, 2:00. And he asked that we would pray for 15 minutes. He wants 200,000 people praying at the same time. So let's please honor that request. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ethel. Yes, Senator Scherer mentioned that he wanted to make that request. And so that's mentioned in the action guide on the first page. Share that prayer request at that hour. That is when the Senate Bill Committee is going to have the opportunity to decide to bring this bill forward or not. So pray then. We also, like Ethel said, need your testimony. So on the action, there is one button on the event page that says that you want to testify, or step 5 in the action guide. There's a link to a Google form on that where you can say you are interested in testifying. Because there's only 10, we want to be able to look at that and say, okay, here are the best 10 testimonies from experts, from people with background. If you're post-abortive, if you have a story or you have experience, please submit that, and so we can have make the most of those 10 testimonies, and that is what that is for, and someone will be in touch with you. So now we've been talking a lot about the state laws and everything happening, but it's not just New Mexico. This potentially can have a national impact, and so here to comment a little bit with us is Catherine Glenn Foster from Americans United for Life. Thank you for joining us, Catherine.
Good evening. Thank you. And good evening to all of you. It is such a pleasure to join you here tonight. I am Catherine Glenn Foster, President and CEO of Americans United for Life. I'm a constitutional attorney, a mother, and a post-abortive woman. My legal team at Americans United for Life works in Congress and the courts and in all 50 state capitals to protect life by advocating for life-saving laws and defeating legislation that seeks to devalue the inherent worth of each and every human being. We are currently speaking tonight on the 48th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, the legal decision that has haunted our nation now for 3 generations. While Roe invalidated health and safety laws from coast to coast, we now can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Roe is on the way out. Everyone can see it. Legal scholars on both the left and the right have been telling us that when it comes to the US Constitution and sound judicial decisions, Roe is dead wrong. They've been telling us that for nearly 50 years now. Then back in fall 2019, long before we got a new Justice Amy Coney Barrett seated on the bench, I was in Philadelphia debating the lawyer who argued the 1992 Planned Parenthood v. Casey case for Planned Parenthood. And she told a live studio audience and many thousands of Americans who were watching over live stream that this is the court that will overturn Roe. And as I crisscross our great nation, the resolute advocates on the front lines tell me that our communities are becoming more and more pro-life. We will soon be able to truly protect life in our communities once more, without the heavy fist of the US Supreme Court stopping us. That means working even harder, doubling down in every state and in every community to prepare for the coming day when Roe will have assumed its rightful place in the dustbin of history, and the ball will be totally back in the court of local leaders. At the same time, what we must steadfastly oppose are efforts to codify Roe preemptively, which would tie the hands of leaders to save lives once Roe is overturned by the court. What's clear, working in states coast to coast, is that there are leader states and there are follower states. Policy entrepreneurialism is not a universal trait. Some states have leaders with the ambition to try new things. Other states see that, and they may emulate. That goes double for life-related law. The first states to pass born alive bills, for example, or heartbeat bills, they were considered radicals. But in the years since, we've seen that they set the standard for pro-life states across the country. They led, and others followed. The same goes for states that veer into the worst forms of anti-life extremism, like New York and California. If the people of New Mexico allow these bills to pass, New Mexico will become a leader in the worst way. But New Mexico isn't New York or California. And the effects of a moderate state like New Mexico enacting not only the most extreme pro-abortion policy, but also opening the door to suicide by physician and euthanasia, that would embolden anti-life forces across the nation. Remember what President John F. Kennedy reminds us of during his inaugural address. The rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. For the sake of the direction of all 50 states, we must hold the line in New Mexico for the human rights of the most vulnerable among us. Stand strong, pro-life advocates of the great state of New Mexico. The nation stands with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. And I love that way of looking at this. This really is an opportunity for New Mexico to be that Cinderella story, and here also to tell us the importance of holding the abortion industry accountable. And I wanted to invite you because you had a beautiful event earlier today. Are some friends of mine, Bud and Tara Shaver of Abortion Free New Mexico. Thank you so much for joining us, Bud and Tara. It's good to see you.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having us. We're really blessed to be a part of this important webcast. You know, we've been serving New Mexico for over 10 years as full-time pro-life missionaries. And so we're super encouraged to see how the pro-life community has grown and how everyone is mobilized and just really eager to be involved and stay involved. And so we hope that tonight's webcast just serves as a catalyst to continue that momentum. We hope that everyone will stay involved and that our community will continue to grow so that we can make the biggest impact possible here in New Mexico. Tonight, as we kind of reach the end of this webcast, we just wanted to encourage everyone to stand firm in your passion, to stand for life, and we stand with you. There are two final points that we wanted to kind of bring up. that are just super important, super critical in this battle for life. The first one is prayer. And tonight we actually held, on this 48th anniversary of Roe versus Wade, we held a candlelight vigil at the only cemetery in the state of New Mexico that has 2 aborted babies buried there. And every September we hold a memorial service for them, but we really felt that it was important to go there tonight with a group of people and just really be present and prayerful and have a solemn vigil, because really prayer has always been our most powerful tool as believers. And we need to be even more on our knees now as we approach 2021 with new leadership and everything in this nation. So, it's very, very important to be prayerful, and we know that this is a very spiritual battle. So we just want to encourage everyone with that. But we also believe that, our prayers shouldn't stop there. We've always been mentored that our prayers should lead us to act. And that's why we at Abortion Free New Mexico are working to close the state's last 5 remaining abortion facilities. So it's kind of hard to believe that in the 90s, there were over 2,000 abortion facilities nationwide. Well, now there's under 500. And that's because of the good work of pro-lifers all over this nation that seek to hold the abortion industry accountable. And that's what we're doing at Abortion Free New Mexico. And we know that there are many people on the webcast tonight that are faithfully involved on the sidewalks. And we just want to encourage you in your efforts. And we want you to know how vitally important that you are, and we want to just encourage you to keep being vigilant in those efforts. Make sure that you are collecting the data that groups like the Southwest Coalition, like our group, and others can use to actually strip these abortionists of their licenses. So any ambulances that you see, any suspicious activity, it's just really important to be ready to record and just be ready to document those things so that we can hold the abortion industry accountable. We're always sort of, on the offense in the political realm, but we can really be strategic moving forward. And Mark is really doing a great job holding the abortion industry accountable there with lawsuits and just being really on top of it. So through these types of efforts in our ministry, we've seen medical board disciplinary hearings on late-term abortionists, such as Shelley Sella, and we've also seen pro-life legislation occur as a response to our investigative research as well and our outreach. So the abortion industry has many weaknesses. We as a community have to identify them. But at the end of the day, we just want to reiterate that there is a place for everyone in the pro-life community. And let's work together, prayerfully seek the Lord about how you can be involved moving forward. We need soldiers in this battle. And I just wanted to say that you can find us at abortionfreenm.com. And the verse for our ministry should encourage us all. Seek the well-being of the city or the state to which you've been sent to. Pray for it to the Lord, because when we seek the well-being of our state and our communities, we find our own well-being. So that's in Jeremiah 29:7. Thank you all. God bless you.
Amen. Thank you, guys. And I love exactly what you said. It is so important that yes, this is an opportunity to act right now and call and be involved politically. But I hope that just be a kindling that lights a fire in you, because this is an everyday, every week, every month, every year, constant battle, and we need your help and support. Today and tonight, this is an easy way. This is an easy opportunity to make these phone calls and contact your legislators. But yes, absolutely, please learn from Bud and Tara, and do not allow that to just be it. This is something we have to do in every way. And I wanted to say earlier, like when Dominique was saying, I firmly believe every person who says they're pro-life needs to be supporting monthly their closest pregnancy help center and pro-life organizations to actually be a solution to this problem. So, and thank you for reminding us as we come into the end here with a closing prayer. And for a closing prayer and a statement from the Archdiocese of Santa Fe is Deacon Steve Rangel. And Deacon, I got a text. Did you also have someone else with you?
Yes, if you would have, can you recognize Rebecca? She's going to go ahead and share a statement from the bishops.
Okay, I don't see her logged on at the moment, but if she gets on, we can add her, or if you have it yourself, you're welcome to go ahead and read it, and we'll invite her onto our next event.
Okay. Yes, definitely. First of all, thank you for putting this on, and I'm inspired and re-energized with all the people that have been speaking tonight. Truly standing up for life, and we can't thank everybody enough for what you're doing. As the bishops always, each year we look at certain legislation, and unfortunately, we keep seeing the death legislations keep coming up. House Bill, Senate Bill 10, and House Bill 47. We are always worried about that SB 10 because it has taken away the conscience clause protecting doctors and nurses from being forced to participate in abortions. And there is, sanctity of life. If we learn anything from this COVID-19 is how we should take every measure as a nation to protect life. And yet we continue to see these bills of death appear in our state. And of course, with assisted suicide, it opens up for human error. It's definitely something that we fought against in the death penalty. Anytime you have human error as a possibility of causing some innocent person to die, it should be stopped. And House Bill 47 opens that door. It is unethical because it places doctors and nurses in conflict with their medical oath, Hippocratic oath, which states it speaks up respecting one's instructors, using medical knowledge to help rather than harm. The data is clear. If we have palliative care, hospice to deal with pain, there's no reason for this. If we are not willing to provide health care, palliative care, and hospice for everyone, we have no business writing prescription drugs to kill. What we should be talking about is to make sure everybody has health care so they don't be forced in making those tough decisions of death or life. They took a poll recently and they polled those individuals that were contemplating assisted suicide. And the top 5 did not have pain as a reason to select assisted suicide. In fact, the number 1 was a burden to someone. Each of us, especially here in New Mexico, value family. And it's our obligation to take care of family, not to kill them. And so there should be no reason to choose something that causes death, especially if they claim that it's about pain. Well, pain, we have ways to deal with that. So I continue to pray for each and every one of you that are willing to stand up and make a stand for life and give everybody choices of life instead of death. And I'd like to have a prayer for each and every one of you. If you would take a moment to bow your head. Heavenly Father, we give thanks to you who alone have the power to impact the breath of life as you form each of us in our mother's womb. Grant, we pray, that we, whom you have made stewards of creation, may remain faithful to the sacred trust in the safeguarding of the dignity of every human life from conception to natural death. We ask you for your strength and wisdom to promote the culture of life against the culture of death that is plaguing our nation. May we bring your light of life, which will illuminate the darkness, to unveil the truth through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God forever and ever. God bless all of you and your families who are willing to stand up for life. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Deacon. It's a pleasure to have you. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. So we've reached the end of our guest list. Again, you are on the page. Make sure everybody goes to NewMexicoMarchForLife.com. We will keep that site updated as things develop. And remember that there will be a second part to this that is in person on February 2nd in Santa Fe. If at all possible, make plans to be there to make a long statement. In the meantime, make those phone calls, send those emails, pray first and foremost, and I challenge everybody to get at least 10 people to do the same. Making prayers, saying prayers, making phone calls, sending emails, and that is what's going to make a difference. We saw the state of New Mexico in 2019 defeat these 2 bills before, and we know we can do it again. So that concludes our broadcast this evening. You will get an email with the recording to share. Thank you, and have a good night.